I've been talking with Jenny Flanagan.
Will.
Will Flanagan. There is no party at 10. I do well. How do you do?
Oh!
But today,
Oh my gosh! No, it's all good. This is my son Will.
Hey, Will.
Yes.
I got this survey cards
So
about.
it's
Well, we don't have this pen.
I would be party food.
His grandpa.
I'll do that. Don't you want it back then?
I don't want it back.
Coco. You guys want to walk by the shreds without saying hello? You're awesome. Family. Even though the shreds.
I don't. Got one now.
You know, I just, because my eyes were outside and I came in and I was like,
All right. Look how you doing. Good. This is my son Will.
I can't hear you.
all right, Sergeant Carter.
I want to get things started fairly promptly today because we have not a good speaker, but an excellent speaker coming in to speak to us today. He's going to broaden our minds about computer hacking, and my grandson told me today if saying it wrong, it's not phishing, it's fishing. And the PH has an F sound. And I had to hear that lecture all the way here. So he's outside, okay. So we are also honored today with James Morlock, who came in. You can't hear me. He's there.
Hey, James. Fantastic.
And John has returned to see us here.
Yes.
So, we all know the routine. We will open with a prayer. John, would you be so kind?
If you would join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. God bless America. Red, yellow, brown, black, or white, we're all precious in Jesus' sight. God bless you. Now our creed.
Promise yourself to be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind. To talk health, happiness, and prosperity to every person you meet. To make all your friends feel there is something in them. To look at the sunny side of everything and make your optimism come true. To think only of the best, to work only for the best, and to expect only the best. To be just enthusiastic about the success of others as you are about your own. To forget the mistakes of the past and press on to the greater achievements of the future. To wear a cheerful countenance at all times and give every living creature you meet a smile. To give so much time to the improvement of yourself that you have no time to criticize others. To be too large for worry, too noble for anger, too strong for fear, and too happy to permit the presence of trouble.
Of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Folks, let's let Kimmy.
Got some seats up there.
So that Kimmy doesn't have to do it 15 times. Kimmy, you want to tell us what Ken? Hey, Ken?
Hold on.
You want to tell everybody what the special is?
Yes, I do. Today's special is a mini Big Easy burger, which means it's 2 3-ounce patties, American cheese, lettuce, and tartar sauce, and it comes with a soup and salad bar. Soups are Italian wedding or vegetable. No substitutions on the special. So there's that. Let me get his.
Oh, sheesh. I'm ready to fall down.
take just a moment and let Kim get the orders real quick, and then we'll get right into the program.
Senior portion liver nut. Mashed potatoes and broccoli.
Marco Rubio.
Yep.
God bless.
Did they figure out what they have done?
By the way, my name is Denny Shelton with the Optimist Club in Covington. We meet every Wednesday at 12 noon at Pee Wee's Place, 2325 Anderson Road, Crescent Springs, Kentucky. For our TBNK viewers, today is July the 9th, 2025. Today's presentation is videoed and rebroadcast on Spectrum Channel 203, Ultra Fiber Channel 815 on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Stay connected with TBNK to go on demand, TBNK Facebook, and Optimus Facebook. James Morlock, the gentleman behind the camera today, is our program director and editor and operator and makes our rebroadcast programs possible. Thank you, Mr. Morlock.
Amen.
We are, as I said before, we don't have a good speaker today, we have a great speaker. Today we have Dave Hatter joining us. Dave is an accomplished author and contributor to many technological books. He founded, is that Libertas?
Yeah, but you don't tell me else.
I'm picking and choosing, Dave, now, come on. He founded Libertas Technology Software Development in 2001. Here's the important part, Dave. Makes you a celebrity. Dave is a radio personality, as he shares his computer expertise on Tech Friday, not Thursday, but Friday, weekly, 6:30 a.m. WKRC with Brian Thomas, WLW with Gary Jeff Walker, Nightcap. Dave is a frequent contributor on WXIX TV, Channel 19, and Local 12, WKRC. The word I got, I don't know if it's true, the word I got is that Dave actually taught Bill Gates how to program in the basement. Dave, you're on, sir.
Back on your feet. There she goes. Can they hear me that on the TV?
There's no feedback now.
Hello. Do you need me to talk to these? That's the TV. This one? Yes. All right. Yeah. You can pick it up and turn it around if you'd like, whatever you want. Yeah, I think I'll do that. We can figure out how to speak up with it. All right. So how are we all doing today? Good. All right. Prepare to laugh and mostly cry. So, today, I'm going to try to get out of the screen here. We're going to talk about cybersecurity and what you need to do to defend yourself from the ever-increasing threats that are out there. As you can see, we're going to hit, where are we now? Why is all of this happening? The common threats you're likely to run into as an individual, and then what you can do about it. But the good news is there are plenty of concrete steps you can take to protect yourself from this stuff. The sad thing is, though, the threat landscape is constantly changing. The bad guys are very creative and devious, and they're making enormous amounts of money. So it's an ever-changing minefield out there, and you really have to understand what's going on and maintain a healthy business practices. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have along the way. So, kind of set the table here a little bit. This chart is from Statista. They're a well-known organization that produces this kind of stuff. As you can see, there's a bunch of different sources they pulled this from. And the point is less so about the numbers themselves and more about any sort of source you look at. You're going to see this hockey stick-like trend upwards in terms of cyber attacks. Because, again, unfortunately, they're very successful and they're making lots of money. But it's one thing to look at organizations that are trying to sell you stuff and warn about this. This is actually from Coalition, an insurance company that writes cyber insurance policies. And the point I'm trying to make with this is, you can see it's not just folks like me trying to warn about this, trying to sell you something, people like Microsoft trying to sell you something. The insurance companies are the people that have to deal with the aftermath of these things. And again, the numbers are less important than the trends as far as I'm concerned. This also from Coalition, I mean, you can see, you're talking about big numbers. Now this is obviously more enterprise grade business level stuff, but the point I'm trying to make is whether you look at the people trying to defend against it or the people trying to recover from it, the trends are similar. Then you see headlines like this: my company thrived for 100 years and Russian hackers brought it down in 3 months. I can tell you, as a small business working with other small and medium-sized businesses in the tri-state area, I could spend the rest of the afternoon telling you real-world horror stories that have led to not only tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars in loss, but some companies that did not survive. So, again, I know a lot of this will seem far-fetched. A lot of this is going to seem totally insane. This could never happen to you. But the thing you need to leave here with, other than hopefully a lot of knowledge, and you can have this slide deck because I've got a lot of resources linked at the end, is you really have to be, if you think about it from the perspective of like if you're being chased by a bear, you just have to be faster than the slowest person, right? You need to understand what the risks are, and you need to be the faster, you need to be the Jesse Owens of the bear chase, right? So the slow person gets eaten. And the good news is there are plenty of things you can do, many of which cost nothing. You just need to have the knowledge and deal with the friction it creates to defend yourself against this stuff. You may, yes.
Could you like move your hand up just a little bit, not lock it up?
Better?
Just like middle mic, better.
Better? All right, sorry. Okay, some of you may have seen this story. It's a Kettering Health, large health hospital chain, primarily in the Dayton area. They come, a decent way south. They got hit with a ransomware attack. They were down for weeks, and as recently as 3 weeks ago, they still had some systems that were down. So again, when you say this could never happen to me, I don't need to care about any of this stuff, as our world becomes increasingly interconnected, as everything becomes increasingly digital, you see these real world kinetic impacts like this. Did anyone die as a result of the fact that they couldn't get help at some of their facilities? I don't know. That has yet to be revealed. But certainly, it's not good for you if you're in a hospital with some sort of critical medical event, or in an ambulance on the way to the hospital, and the hospital has to turn you away because all their systems are. Right? So that's the sort of thing we're facing today. And then I always like to try to drive this point home. Who here has not gotten a letter from some company telling you that your data has been breached? Is there anyone who has not gotten one of those letters? No. Okay, so not a single hand went up, and that's typically what I see. I can tell you I've gotten 4 or 5 of them at least, sometimes from former employers, sometimes from companies I've never done business with. Because your data is very valuable and it's being sold from one company to another, it gets breached. So there's really not a whole lot you can do about that, and that's to stop it, other than try to limit your digital footprint in general. But the reason why this is important, right? 184 million records, you see 4 billion records, 16 billion records. The reason why this is important to all of you is because every time your data gets leaked, it becomes valuable to the bad guys to either A, impersonate you for some sort of fraud in your name, or B, they have information that would allow them to convince you they're legitimate when they reach out to you with some kind of scam. Who here has not had a background check? Anybody? Probably taken at least 1 or 2 background checks for some job somewhere, right? Think about the information that you have supplied during a background check. Places you've lived, places you've worked, your family members. If I had all that information about you, how easy do you think it would be for me to reach out to you and claim to be the Kenton County Sheriff's Office or the IRS or whoever else? Because I would have information that, in theory, only these legitimate organizations would have. Does what I'm saying make sense here? Yeah. So when you see this data breach stuff, you have to understand this is fueling the bad actors. It's making it much easier for them to, again, impersonate legitimate agencies when they come after you, or B, impersonate you and do some sort of fraud in your name. And then finally, this is kind of where we're at. Your keyboard is kind of like a grenade at this point. If you press the wrong key, you can pretty much blow up your whole life and your whole world. And whether it's you as an individual or you as part of an organization, sadly, this is kind of where we're at. You can see this headline. This is actually a couple of years old. Homeland Security is one of the cyber attacks intended to kill people. For example, knocking out hospitals. Or look up the Oldsmore water plant for fun in Florida, when the bad guys actually were able to hack into a water plant and change the amount of chemicals poured into the water. This is a real thing. Yeah. This is happening all the time, by the way. And I can tell you, our whole infrastructure is just complete garbage. No one takes this stuff seriously. No one believes this is ever gonna happen again. So anyhow, but I'll save that for another day. So, why is all of this happening now? Well, there's a whole bunch of factors that are sort of conspiring against you as an individual and us as a society, because everything is increasingly. Who here does not have a smartphone? Okay, not a single hand went up. Who here spends less time online now? Whether it's education, entertainment, work, or whatever, who here spends less time online now than you did 5 years ago? Okay, again, not another hand went up. My point being, and this is kind of an eye chart, I get that, and I'm not going to read all this to you, but you can look at these different metrics. They put this out every year, and obviously it's an approximation, but we're doing more and more online. There's more ways for the bad guys to get to you. There's more ways for the bad guys to use all this information that they have about you in order to fool you, right? Again, we're going to dive much deeper into some of this stuff. And then one of my favorite topics to bash about, or bash on rather, and for those of you who have seen me talk about this before, I just can't stay out of it, these so-called Internet of Things, which is the biggest smoldering pile of flaming garbage you can do. Okay? Your Ring doorbell, your Nest thermostat, your smart TV, your smart coffee maker, your smart washing machine, all complete garbage. The whole business model of this stuff is wrong. They do not care one iota about your privacy or security. They care about speed to market, ease of use, and market share. That's what drives these things, okay? In fact, you are their product. They're selling you this garbage at next to nothing because they really care about your data, right? So, again, this is an approximation into the future of how many so-called smart devices there will be out there. The stuff is complete garbage. Now let this sink in for a second. These are various smart devices you may have around your house, okay? And I'm not going to read all these to you, but a couple interesting ones. Your Roomba sweeper. If you have a Roomba, you should go home and smash it into pieces and throw it in the garbage as soon as possible. Do yourself a favor, don't take my word for this, do yourself a favor, go online and do a search and find the pictures of people on the toilet that the Roomba took of them and somehow got on the internet. This is a real thing, okay? Okay, so your Roomba, why am I hacker $100 or I'll reverse my motor and blow dirt all over? Or, before they put the cameras in it, maybe it would just drive around and when it identifies that that is not a pile of socks on the floor, it's actually a pile of dog poop, it'll just smear it all over the house for you. But this is the really disturbing one here, the smoke detector / fire alarm. Send me 30 bucks in Bitcoin, and the next time you're sleeping, I might just let you sleep when I smell smoke. That's where we're at with this stuff. How many of you have a Ring doorbell? Go ahead, I know some of you do, raise your hand. Do you know that it can hear you from up to 25 feet away? So when you're having a conversation with your neighbor out in the front yard that perhaps you wouldn't want the whole world to know about, it might be going to Amazon, it might be posted on the internet at some point. So I'm sure you have guessed by now, I don't have a Ring doorbell. I don't have a Nest thermostat. I don't have any of this garbage. And I'm not going to have any of it in the anytime in the near future.
Do you have a smartwatch?
No.
Because they listen to you too, right?
Yes, they do. Well, you can potentially disable that, but yes. Well, okay, ask yourself a question. If you have a device that you can talk to, okay? Now, there are numerous lawsuits around this, and most of this has been proven out over time. But if you have a device you can talk to, how can it not be listening to you? Right. How can it respond to you if it's not listening to you? So the real question is, what is it recording? And there are many studies out there that show, for example, they took a room full of things like Alexa. The only good use of an Alexa is at the ski range. And that's its only good use. They took things like Alexa and Google Home and so forth and put in the room and turned the TV on and just let the TV play to see how often these things would activate. Well, they activate a lot more frequently than you would think, going back to my earlier point, that this is all about ease of use. If it's too hard for it to respond to you, you're going to get frustrated and not use it. So of course they turned the knobs on the thing to make it less difficult to work with, right? And thus listen to you more often and potentially activate more than it would under a more rigorous kind of set of instructions, right? So again, I don't want to make the whole thing about this, but you got to understand all of these devices that people are plugging in are all forget the privacy part, they're all potential security holes. How many of you here changed the default password on the fill-in-the-blank device that you have? Do you even know what I'm talking about? Okay, I saw one hand up, probably not. How many of you here know how to update the software in your smart coffee maker? How many of you here know that your Ring doorbell, Nest thermostat, whatever, Google actually just stopped supporting a whole wide variety of Nest thermostats? because they're old and they don't want to put money into it anymore. So if you have one of those, there won't be any more software updates coming for that. If it's got a known bug that would allow hackers to access it, which then could lead them to your computer, which could then lead them to all of your money in the bank, they're not going to do anything about that. How many people here would even know that's a thing? Yeah, so this stuff is garbage. But again, I don't want to make this whole presentation about that.
What about smart meters from Duke Energy?
I don't have an opinion.
Are they listening to us?
They could. If it's connected to the internet, it could listen to you. Does it have a microphone? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just outside of the internet.
So your data is being collected in every conceivable way under the sun because it has intrinsic value to the companies collecting it, to persuade you to sell to other companies, but it also is extremely valuable to the bad guys. Again, when you see all these data leaks and breaches and so forth, they're using all of this data to either A, impersonate you, or B, convince you they're legit when they reach out with one of their scams. People tell me, well, I got nothing to hide, I don't care about any of this. Okay, so here's an infographic from Experian, one of the big 3 credit bureaus, showing you what your data is worth on the dark web. So your data by itself, just the data itself, has intrinsic value, much less the scamming and fraudulent aspects of it. Again, still on the how did we get here and why now, and then you have all kinds of different players in the game out there, right? From the guy in his mom's basement, who's just seeing what he can come across and potentially steal, all the way up to nation-state actors like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. They're sort of the axis of evil in space. The FBI director said a couple of years ago that they believe China has a 50-to-1 advantage of attackers versus defenders in the United States. The FBI has also said that they believe North Korea makes at least $2 billion a year in theft that they use to run their government. So you have whole countries out there full of highly skilled people who are doing all kinds of nefarious deeds. No, China is probably not targeting anyone in this room. And if they are, there's probably not anything you're going to do about it. They're eventually going to get what they want, simply because they have unlimited time and unlimited resources. But for anything downstream of these nation-state actors, right, all the people who are out there looking for the low-hanging fruit, trying to see, are you the guy who can't outrun the bear? There's all kinds of things you can and should do to protect yourself. Again, I'll get to that in a minute. Last couple of things that make this all possible. So in the old days, if you wanted to go out and set up a server and launch these kinds of attacks and so forth and they scale, you'd have to make a capital investment. You'd have to buy a server, you'd have to buy software licensing. All this stuff is available for free or at very low cost all over the internet. Here's a website where you can go spin up a server and try it for 30 days. It also means that if I can bounce my stuff around, it's much harder to track me down. And you need to understand, much of this crime is not coming from onshore. It's coming from overseas in places where at best the government turns a blind eye to it, and at worst they're complicit in it, like North Korea, right? Or they're nation-state actors like China. Some of you may have seen, recent headlines about Chinese hackers in the telecom system, Chinese hackers in solar panels. If you haven't seen this, just do yourself a favor and go out and see what the FBI and DHS has said about critical infrastructure and the risk of these various hackers in it and the ability to turn off the power grid. Bitcoin and other types of cryptocurrencies, right? That makes it easy for the bad guys to get your money, or relatively easy. It certainly works to send them a check or put the cash in an envelope and mail it to like Chad or something, right? And then finally you have encryption. Encryption is a powerful technology. It cuts both ways. On one hand, it helps you defend your assets. On the other hand, it helps the bad guys cover their tracks. And then the last point here, so every year, Verizon, Microsoft, and other large companies will put out reports telling you about what they see, right? And they're seeing things at much higher scale than a company like Intrust, right? So that 85% is Verizon's recent data breach report saying 85% of the successful attacks they see are geared at people. They're not attacking your computers. They're not, directly anyway, they're not attacking your smart thermostats or whatever. They're spoofing you with phishing and text messages and things like that, and taking advantage of the fact that people don't understand all these different ways they can come at you. It's human beings making mistakes that drive most of this, right? And then you can see Bruce Schneier is a world-renowned cryptographer, very well respected in this space. Only amateurs attack machines, professionals target people. Can I find a vulnerability in your smart coffee maker? If you give me long enough, probably. But that might take hours, days, weeks, right? And then even if I can get into your smart coffee maker, it might take hours or days or weeks to get to the next device. If I can send you a very realistic looking email or text or something and get you to click a link, I can get what I want in minutes, perhaps, right? So again, they're going after people primarily because it's not only easier, they know the average person does not understand any of this stuff. So, what are the threats you're most likely to really encounter today? So this is from Microsoft's big annual report. And notice they talk about identity attacks. This is going after the people aspect again, right? They're going after your identity, your credentials, your username and password. They also know that people have bad habits, like you have the same password for multiple accounts. If I can steal your Facebook password or hack or crack your Facebook password, chances are I can get into your bank or whatever else you got out there, because that's how people operate, right? So they say 99% of identity attacks, again, going after your identity, trying to take over your account, are based on passwords, right? So now, let's take a look at this chart. This comes out every year. Here's the most recent one. Now, they're doing the testing on this on some fairly high-end hardware. It's not something your average person's going to have. But suffice it to say, if you have a password that is just 4 numbers, it can be cracked instantaneously. You might as well not even bother to have a password. You're just wasting your time, frankly, okay? Now, notice as you go across, you can see the complexity of the password increases, right? And what they're trying to illustrate here is, as passwords get longer and get more complex, it's not just numbers only, or it's not just letters only, right? When you get all the way out here on the right-hand side, you have a complex password. It's numbers, symbols, uppercase, and lowercase letters, right? So now notice, if we go down to 8, right? You have 8 characters in your password. If it's still numbers only, it basically, again, you might as well not even have a password, right? But once you go over to upper and lowercase letters, well, it would take 15 years using these fairly powerful computers to crack that password. This is brute force. I'm just going to keep going until I eventually guess it, right? And if it's numbers, upper and lowercase letters and symbols, it would take you at 8 characters, 164 years, right? So we've doubled the length of the complexity, basically. And you can see you went from instantaneous to 164 years. If you take it out to 18 characters, 18 random characters, right? It's 463 quintillion years. The sun will burn out, the earth will cease to exist before, I don't know what I did with my water, there it is, before you can crack that password. So,
David?
Yep.
A question. How much will that chart change when quantum computing comes on?
Quantum computing throws all this out the window, and when you get real quantum computers, none of this will matter. You'll have to go about this a whole different way, because basically all of this will be instantaneously tracked.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you go back and look at like last year's chart, you'll see each year there's these continue to go down because the current processing power continues to increase. So the biggest risk, in my opinion, that you all face is spoofing. The idea that it is very simple to create things that look incredibly realistic. Sadly, this is very easy to do, and it requires virtually zero technical skill. So let's take a look at a couple examples here, right? So if you look at this first, this appears to be a woman looking out the window of a plane at the wing and the tarmac, right? But in actuality, as you zoom out, she's holding up a toilet seat and looking at a TV. Right? So this is trying to help you visualize what I mean by spoofing. When you're here, this looks realistic, but in actuality, it's this, right? So now, if you look at this other guy over here, first off, different languages have different character sets. Think of German, it's got umlauts, and all these different things, right? You don't just have like the letter U, it's got the thing over it, and all that stuff, diacritical marks, all that stuff, right? So if you look at the Citibank example here, right? If I sent you an email with a link that had Citibank there, theoretically, the top one is the legitimate Citibank link, right? If you were to click that link, it goes to Citibank.com. But notice if you look at the next one, if you scrutinize it carefully, you'll see that is not an A. It is the acrylic letter A. It's a different character set. But to the naked eye, would you notice that? Well, probably not. Because first off, you probably didn't even know this was a thing, right? And then secondarily, unless you are carefully scrutinizing these things, you would never notice that it doesn't really stand out in any way. This is incredibly simple to do, right? It happens all the time. So here's a quick tidbit for you. It's Amazon Prime Day for the next several days, right? I don't know why they don't call it Prime Week now, but whatever. NordVPN reported recently that 120,000 websites they discovered, 120,000, not 12, not 1,200, 120,000 fraudulent websites were set up to convince you they're legitimate Amazon websites. In 2 months, 2 months prior to Prime Day, 120,000 websites set up. Okay? They're doing things like this. They're going to Amazon. It is trivially easy for anyone in this room, after a couple of Google searches, and actually I despise Google, more on that later, don't use Google, to go out and find software that will crawl the website and suck everything down off of it. Whether it's the Kent County Sheriff, whether it's Pee-wee's website, Amazon, fill in the blank, I can point software at any website and it will basically copy the whole thing. I can dump that on one of these free servers somewhere offshore, register a domain name that looks very similar to the real domain name, send you an email, and you will go to the completely bogus website. So before I say anything else, does what I'm saying generally make sense to everyone?
Yes.
The spoofing risk is enormous, okay? So that's a perfect example there. Again, more on that, we're gonna dig deeper into this. I'm gonna show you some real world examples of this. Some good and some not so good, okay? So I think most of you know my spare time on the mayor of Fort Wright. Here's a poorly spoofed email, okay? So this went to our public works director, and a lot of times people will say too, well, how would they get this information? Well, you could just go to the Fort Wright website and see that I'm the mayor and that he's the public works director, right? This is all easily accessible information. There's a whole field in cybersecurity called OSINT, open source intelligence, all geared around finding information online that you can then use either as a defender or an attacker. So here, the spoofing is not very good, right? They used my name, but they came from a Gmail account, right? Just some random Gmail account that's there. They sent it to Jeff, our public works director, and it's the old, hey Jeff, I need you to get some gift cards for council, sort of thing, right? So probably some of you have seen this sort of thing yourselves. You can see here, the punctuation is weird, the grammar is not very good. You know, I would never ask them to do something like this, but the point is, you know, they spoofed me and attempted to perpetrate this gift card scam. We see this all the time. But not very good. It's got a lot of tells, okay? Now, thanks to AI, like ChatGPT and Grok and Copilot and so forth, this is gone. People that don't speak English at all can use a tool like ChatGPT to write perfect prose. And if they had access to enough of my writing style, could take emails from me or things I've written online or whatever, dump it into one of those tools and create an email that will absolutely convince you that it came from me. So, again, a big part of all what you're going to take away from this today is awareness, knowing that this is a thing, right? So that you can be skeptical. We're going to talk about defense in depth, multiple layers of things that you're going to need to do to protect yourself. The two most fundamental ones are knowing that this is a thing, this kind of thing is a thing, spoofing in general, right? And being extremely skeptical of things. And you'll see why as we go further. Now, some of you have seen me speak before. I use this joke all the time, but there's a lot of truth to it. If you know me, you would know I could get an email like this from an attorney telling me my wife wants a divorce today. It might be in my pocket right now. So this shows up, you know, looks fairly realistic. Like, you know, it's a little off, like, you know, there's no sort of punctuation after the Dave there. And I'm guessing some attorney that doesn't know me, John, you fill in the blanks here, is not going to call me Dave in some sort of casual way like this. But in general, if you read that, it is relatively good compared to like the really off-the-wall, terrible sort of red flags, okay? And I'm supposed to click this link to get the divorce papers that my wife sent me via email that I didn't know anything about, right? Now again, that might be in my pocket right now, who knows? So, here's a takeaway you should remember. I would strongly encourage you to never open any links on a phone, because you can't mouse over it like you can on a computer and see where the link points. Okay? On a full-blown computer, in any mail client, you can take your cursor and just put it over the link, and when you do this cover, don't click it, it will show you where the link actually goes. Again, this is part of spoofing. To the naked eye, it says this, but it actually does this. Now, first thing you need to understand is, just because these two don't sync up is not necessarily a red flag, okay? However, if they don't sync up, you should be extremely skeptical. You should stop, take a breath, and move cautiously from there. Now, notice, when I mouse over this, it actually says add2.password.ram. It says it's going to some law firm, but in actuality, it's going to something that has the word password in it. Doesn't sound like something I would want to click on now, does it? And I suspect if I clicked on this, and you'll see an example of this in a minute, what would happen is I would see a screen that looks exactly like, because they copied it, exactly like the Microsoft 365 login screen that you've probably all seen. It would want me to enter my username and password. Why would I need to enter a username and password to read the divorce papers some attorney I've never heard of sent to me? Right? I mean, this is screaming problems from the get-go. But they've done a good job with the spoofing here. And they're using social engineering to try to catch you off guard, to try to create some urgency, to try to convince you there's a problem that needs immediate attention so you don't stop and think about these things. And you are not skeptical. Does this make sense what I'm saying so far? So again, I mouse over it now. As soon as I got this, I'm like, well, yeah, maybe, but probably a scam, right? These are some ways you can debunk these things. And again, I cannot stress enough. Skepticism, take a breath, especially for anything you've never done before or anything that's unusual in any way, because sending these out in mass is a piece of cake. I could write a program that would send hundreds of millions of these from some free server in a couple of hours. This is trivial to do, okay? Very, very simple. So let's talk about text for a minute. Who here has gotten the "you owe a total" text? Or better yet, who has not gotten it? Is there anyone who has not gotten a text that you supposedly owe a toll from Easy Pass or something like that, right? Okay, so these are common text scams. More people use text, they go wherever the people are, right? They'll come at you on social media, they'll come at you on text, they'll come at you on email, they'll come at you in video games. Anywhere there's people, you will be attacked by fraudsters, okay? So here's a recent example I got. Thanks for using Apple Pay. Guess what? Don't use Apple Pay. Don't use Venmo, don't use Cash App, also all garbage. But I'll save that for a separate topic. Their account has been automatically charged $1,230.99. Pick up the phone and call this number. Now that is a link, and theoretically I could click it and it would try to call that number, but they're actually trying to get me to talk to a con artist on the phone. Okay? There are whole giant centers of people in places like India who are doing nothing but conning you, right? Now, again, I know this is a scam first off because I don't use Apple Pay. So right off the bat, I know this doesn't apply to me. But they know that some people are going to use Apple Pay and they're going to go, well, I better look into this. And then some people will go, well, I don't know if I use Apple Pay or not. That's a lot of money, I better look into this. And as soon as you dial that number, you're going to be talking to a trained con artist who is going to try to steal your money. Does this make sense to everybody? Now here's the next thing you need to understand. US phone numbers follow a known pattern, right? 3 digits, 4 digits. It is trivially easy to write a program that will literally generate every phone number in that range and send a text message to it. Every one of you in this room can go online right now and find a free website that will allow you to send a text coming from any number you want. You could use my cell phone number and send a text to someone and it will look like it came from my cell phone. Likewise, using these same kinds of sites, you can call me on the phone and type in whatever number you want. This is all free and all available to anyone that wants to use this stuff. Part of the reason why we have all these problems is all of the technology that makes the internet work, and the phone system for that matter, was designed decades ago. In some cases, the phone system 100+ years ago, right? It was not built with security in mind. And while you can retrofit security on top of some of this stuff, it is costly and difficult and causes problems. So consequently, pretty much everything our entire society was built on today is garbage. I'm just being totally frank. I'm also in a terrible mood, but that's a different story. And that's why it's easy for bad guys to do these things. And that's why it ultimately is incumbent upon you to be aware, to be increasingly skeptical, because they're, thanks to these AI tools, becoming very, very good at creating things that look extremely realistic. And like this text, there's nothing I can look at in this text and know that it's fake. There's nothing to the naked eye that tells me this is fake, right? I just know it's fake because, again, I don't use Apple Pay. And I can tell you, I'm not calling a number. In fact, another piece of advice I would give you is don't answer the phone from any number you don't recognize. And even if you recognize the number, understand it could be spoofed. And because there's so much data out there about all of us now, they have everything they need to know, like, oh, look, you worked with Fifth Third Bank. No offense to Fifth Third, but fill in any bank, Bank X, okay? And somewhere in a background check or whatever, they know that, so you get a call that looks like it came from Fifth Third. These people are very smart and very creative, and all of this is very simple. And basically it costs nothing. All right, QR codes. This is one of my favorite topics. Okay, When you look at a QR code, guess what? There's no way you can know what it does. You cannot look at that and know whether it's legitimate or not. You may or may not know that there are well-known scams all around the country where bad guys will print new QR codes and cover the QR code on the parking meter that you're using to pay. No, I don't use any parking apps. If I pull into your parking lot and I have to download your crappy app or scan a QR code, I will park elsewhere. Okay? There's no way you can know whether it's legitimate. If you walk into any random building and there's a QR code and you scan it, unless you have carefully confirmed that A, it's not a QR code on top of another QR code that was the original legitimate one, you can't know for sure whether it's legit. I will not scan. There's probably less than 1% of QR codes I will ever scan because I cannot look at it and know what it does. Now, this is an interesting tactic here, really driving this point home. This came to my work account and was supposedly from our HR department telling me about my benefits plan. Now, why in the world would our internal HR department send me something that requires me to get out a phone and scan the QR code to access it? How does that make any sense, right? The reason why they did is they know most people don't know anything about what I just said, and even advanced email scanning tools that are trying to eat this stuff before it gets to your mailbox can't look at that and know what it does. So it's a very creative and innovative way to get through the mail filtering first off, and they know most people don't know anything about this. So now again, I'm a total tinfoil hat guy, I freely admit it, and I can tell you I am very extreme compared to most people. But it's also because I've been doing this for 30 years and I've seen the destruction this kind of thing creates. I will not scan a QR code in general. Unless I am absolutely positively certain, I just won't do it. So my advice to you is be very, very careful anytime you're dealing with a QR code, especially if it is emailed to you. If this were my legitimate HR department, why wouldn't I just put a link in it? Well, again, why would I need to get out my phone record? How does that make any sense? And the answer is it doesn't. So, AI. Again, we could go off on this all day long. Here's a PSA from the FBI. And everything I'm telling you here today can be easily confirmed. Don't take my word for it. You can go online and find everything I'm telling you very easily. So here's the FBI warning about how criminals are using generative AI, things like ChatGPT, Copilot, Grok, Perplexity, Claude, etc., to make better scams, right? Get rid of all those old red flags in there. Get rid of the bad grammar, the weird punctuation, and all that stuff. And again, to some extent, whether it's video or audio, really up their game. So, to that point, here's an interview I did with John Matarese almost 2 years ago. So he calls me up, and I have a link to it. I encourage you to go watch it. He says, hey, I want to do something on deepfake voice cloning. So generative or synthetic media is the catch-all term for something created by one of these AI tools. Could be text, could be audio, or whatever. Synthetic media does not necessarily have a negative connotation in itself. It's just a term for the output of one of these things, right? Then you get into deepfakes. Most of you have probably at least heard the term. Deepfake would be using one of these tools to create something malicious somehow, right? So voice cloning then is the idea that I am going to get a copy of your voice somehow, and I'm going to create a deepfake of you. Now, most of you are probably thinking, well, I'm not a celebrity, how would you get my voice? How many of you have a voicemail greeting if I call your voicemail? Probably almost everyone in the room, right? So when I call your phone and your voicemail greeting kicks in, I record that, and I'm you in less than 15 minutes. I'm deadly serious about this. So he says, hey, I want to do something on deepfake voice cloning. I said, I think that's a great idea. Now, at the time, I knew it was a thing. I had never tried to do anything with it. Now, this is all true. I literally, he said, I'll be over in about an hour. I went online and I did a search. No, I did not use Google. I did a search, and I found sites that claimed to have this capability. So again, I had no previous experience with this. I found a free site from a search. I created an account, and in less than 15 minutes, cloned my own voice. Played around with that a little bit so I kind of understood how it works. He shows up, sits down in my office, and has him read a phrase, right? So he reads this phrase a couple of times, records his voice, and then you can watch me in this interview, type in, hello grandma, this is John, I need your help, hit a button, and his voice comes out of my speaker. We did this in less than an hour with a free tool that I had never even seen before. That's how easy this is. That was 2 years ago. This technology has rapidly improved. Right? And we didn't try to tweak it at all. If you watch it, if you're really familiar with John Matarese, you'll probably go, that pretty much sounds like him. It's not perfect. But again, we did this in less than an hour with a free tool 2 years ago. Trust me, the technology is a lot better. Now, this is a 2-minute video. Again, I don't have time to play here. The link is in there. I strongly encourage every one of you to go watch this. Everyone that watches this at home, Google has rolled out a new thing called VO3. It allows you to create video. That is a still of a video created with that tool. Now, if I didn't tell you, and you just happen to see that, does that look fake to you? No. Okay, so it's 2 minutes of stuff like this, people like this, all completely synthetic, every bit of it, and it'll be something like this report, like, no, I'm not a reporter in Kosovo, I'm AI. And it'll be like, no, I didn't make $1 million in cryptocurrency, I'm AI, right? I've shared this multiple times in my social media. It's basically 2 minutes of warnings to people that this stuff is incredibly good now, and it's only going to get better.
Can you play that for us?
I'll try later. I'm not connected to their website. And then ransomware, which continues to be a thing, but generally not as targeted towards people. Ransomware, in simple terms, is it encrypts the data on your device or devices, and then they want you to pay a ransom. And it usually also steals whatever data it's encrypting. So when you say, I have a backup, I'm not going to pay the ransom, they'll just go ahead and release all your data on the dark web. And I have seen that happen firsthand many times. So let's take a look at 2 more real world situations here. Just remember, spoofing and social engineering, right? And this is email phishing, right? So this is an email that went to our city clerk at the time. This is 2016 too, by the way. So this is not a new concept, anything I'm telling you. They did a little open source intelligence, obviously, to figure out that I'm the mayor, and Joyce, who is now retired, was our city clerk, okay? And also, I work hard to create a security culture for the city. I talk about this all the time. People are required to go through training about this sort of stuff. So we're constantly on this. I'm screaming about this all the time because I don't want to be the next Wood County, Ohio, that lost like $1.5 million in a ransomware attack or whatever. There's a long laundry list of local governments that have been attacked. So, this is not an account takeover. They are not in my actual email account. This is all spoofed. So if you look, at the time, that was my legitimate email address. Now we have since moved to a .gov domain, so fortright.com is not a thing really anymore. But that is my legitimate email address. Again, they did not hack my account. They sent an email that looks exactly like the real thing. This is trivially easy to do. Any one of you, in an hour of searching on Google, on something other than Google, can figure out how to do this, okay? So email shows up, starts down here. Are you available? I need a quick question. What's the present balance in our checking account, right? Reply as soon as possible. Now, doesn't have my signature block, but pretty good job of spoofing, right? Yeah. So then Joyce says, sorry Dave, just got your message, working on the things. If you mean the general fund checking account, the balance today is $4,285,000 and some change. Now you know the bad guy's got to be thinking, bam, got a live one here, right? So then their response to her is, thanks for the information. I need you to initiate 2 wire transfers today for an international payment and a local payment also. Let me know what information is required. Now again, I don't talk like that. And why in the world would the city of Fort Wright ever do an international wire transfer? How does that make any sense? Well, where would we be sending the money? I mean, maybe in my offshore account, so when I finally quit this job, I can, have my bundle of or something. But what could be a possible legitimate case for this? And thankfully, because I've been talking about this for years now, she said, that doesn't feel right. Again, going back to skepticism, going back to, I'm gonna stop and take a breath. I'm not, even though there's this sort of sense of urgency they're trying to create here, even though technically I'm her boss, right? She said, something doesn't feel right about this, and she did what we nerds like to call go out of band. She said, something is not right. I'm going to call Dave on a phone number that I know is good. So she calls me up and says, hey Dave, what is this wire transfer thing? Like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. She's like, well, you sent me an email wanting to do a wire transfer. I said, look, there's a blue cord going into the back of your computer. Get your scissors, cut that cord, and don't do anything else till I get to you. And thankfully, we averted potential disaster here when she could have wired who knows how much money to these 2 accounts. Okay, so I mean, this is absolutely 100% real. In our business, we see this every single day. And like I said to you, I have seen companies lose. I can tell you the firsthand knowledge of a company in Cincinnati that lost $983,000 due to fraudulent invoices. In this case, They did legitimately get into someone's mailbox because they had a bad password and no multi-factor authentication, more on that in a minute, and then sent out copies of legitimate invoices with the bank payment information changed. Customers paid these invoices thinking they just switched banks, 983 grand down the drain.
How did they spoof your account on this?
Because if you know what you're doing, you can send an email and make it look like it came from any account you want. And it costs nothing. It's trivial. I could send emails that look like they're coming from your circuit clerk account anytime I want. And there's very little you can do about it, frankly. Except understand that anything you get could potentially be fraudulent. So, here's a little better example. So, account takeover, I used that term before. This is fancy nerd speak for I am going to hack your credentials, your username and password, and once I'm in your account, I'm going to figure out how I can do bad stuff, right? So, in this particular case, this account, Daniel Miller, whoever this is, okay, this account is the account that has been taken over. The bad guys have hacked this account. They have sent an email to someone, okay? Someone, and this is not just some random thing. This is a person of a company, two companies that have done business together, okay? This is why account takeover is so powerful. It's one thing to send a spoofed email from me. It's another thing to get into my email and actually send emails from my real account, because they're going to pass all the tests and so forth, right? So this shows up, hey, want a proposal from you guys, so you're getting socially engineered, right? You've got this phishing email, you've got spoofing going on. Well, this technically isn't even really spoofing because they're actually in this guy's account. For all intents and purposes, they are this guy, right? And then you've got the social engineering angle. I want to do business with you. Hey, review this thing and send me a proposal. And now look at that. Do you see anything that looks unusual about it, right? Anything that would trip you that this is illegitimate? Well, no, because this is a really good job of a bad hack, right? So, user gets this email at 10:47. At 10:49, they click that link because, of course, they want to understand what is the business opportunity and potentially submit a proposal, right? So then, we get to here. User clicks that link and it wants them to log into Microsoft. Well, first off, again, why do I need to log in to view a document you sent? Right? That should be a strong red flag to you every time, right? But they have spoofed the Microsoft login page. If you use anything from Microsoft, you've probably seen this before. This is a perfect copy of the Microsoft login page. Trivially easy to do. I could do that in probably less than 5 minutes. Okay? Now, if you look at the URL, which I realize is hard to read back there, that is not the Microsoft URL. But how many people are actually looking at that each time they click something and going, wait a minute, this appears to be the Microsoft website, but it is not the Microsoft website, right? So the user goes ahead, enters their username and password, logs in. Now the bad guys are in their account, and the next thing they do, which they almost always do, is create mailbox rules. So they create rules so that for every email they send, rather than going into the send folder, it's going into some folder they created that you don't see. So John, I'm in your mail now as the circuit clerk, and I'm sending out emails as you, but if you went and looked at the send folder, you would never see any of that because I'm putting it somewhere else that you don't know about. And when people reply to me, pretending to be you, they're also going into another folder that you don't see. So now I'm in there having a conversation as you, and you don't see anything. And this is how companies lose thousands or tens of thousands or millions of dollars, because they'll figure out wherever there's money. The big thing is fraudulent invoices. Hey, we changed our bank, here's your invoice, send the money here now. And people do it, right? So, 1052, these mailbox rules are created to cover their tracks. And then at 1054, again, without getting too deep into this, some proprietary technology we built for our clients in Microsoft 365 detected this and knocked them out, right? But my point is, 3 minutes. It took 3 minutes for them to get in there and start interacting as that person. We see this constantly. This is a huge, huge problem, right? So, what are you going to do about all this, right? I've dumped a bunch of stuff on you. I'm sure you probably don't want to go out of your house now, which I understand. I like to go back to like 1850 and just stay there personally. So, I'm sure most of you probably feel like this guy right here. I get it. And I can empathize with you, right? But you don't need to be scared, you need to be prepared. Like I've said a couple times now, you need to be the faster runner. You don't need to be the fastest runner, you just got to be the faster runner, okay? Because in most cases, China is not coming after you. The endless resources, they're not coming after you. The people who are coming after you are the people just looking for the low-hanging fruit, the easy schools, right? So, back to Microsoft. Every year, as I mentioned, they put out this giant report of what they're seeing out there and what you should hear about. So, this is Microsoft's top 5 things. They're saying if you do these 5 things, you'll block 99% of attacks. Not 100%, nothing's perfect, and frankly, there is nothing you can do other than like go catch Kaczynski and get off the grid and live in a cabin somewhere to completely be impervious to this stuff. It just can't be done. But what you can do is follow the advice I'm going to give you here to make yourself a much, much more difficult target. And in most cases, they're just going to move on to the softer targets. I don't want to spend 2 days to steal $500 from you if I can spend 2 seconds to steal $500 from someone else. Does this make sense to everybody? Okay, so the 5 things Microsoft is saying, and we're going to dig into each one of these in more detail. Enable multi-factor authentication, aka two-step factor or two-factor authentication or two-step verification, right? Turn that on. Apply zero trust principles. This is more of a nerdy business thing, but suffice it to say from an end user / consumer point of view, it's trust nothing, verify everything, okay? Use extended detection and response and anti-malware. Okay, every so often they got to change the terms around in this business to sell you something. One of the reasons why this is frustrating, because I get it's a confusopoly for people that don't care. You know, so this is basically antivirus. Most of you probably at least have a general conception of what antivirus is. Antivirus, anti-malware, MDR, XDR, endpoint protection, all more or less the same thing, okay? Keep your systems up to date. Apply the updates. Microsoft just released a boatload of patches yesterday. If you have Windows devices, you should install those updates as soon as possible, okay? And then finally, protect your data. Encrypt it and back it up. 5 things. Now, interestingly enough, I mentioned the insurance companies before, right? So Microsoft is on the front end of this. They are trying to sell you stuff, and they're trying to help you defend against this. So this is from the insurance perspective, right? The people that have to deal with the aftermath of the people that didn't do all of this stuff, right? Notice, these align almost exactly with what Microsoft is saying. That is not a coincidence, okay? Endpoint detection and response. This is essentially antivirus. EDR, MDR, XDR, all essentially the same thing. Antivirus on your device, right? Multi-factor authentication. Identity and access management and privilege access management. This is essentially passwords, security around your identities, right? Backup procedures, backing up your data, and then patch management, updating your system. So these align almost exactly with what Microsoft is saying. And then you have to understand the idea of defense in depth. There's no one silver bullet. Again, there's really nothing you can do to be completely protected from it. And there's not any one silver bullet, but there are multiple layers of things you need to do. Again, awareness, skepticism, software tools, processes, practices, that sort of thing. So let's look at this. Like a medieval castle, right? You know, first off, you got to get across the moat, right? Then if you get across the moat, you got to get through the gate. You know, you got archers up here, you got boiling oil, you got all these different things they're trying to do to stop you from getting inside the castle. Does this make sense to everybody? Right? Defense in depth, that's what nerds like to call it. So, the first thing, getting back to identity, is password hygiene. The bad guys know that it's difficult to manage dozens, if not hundreds of passwords. They know that people have terrible habits around this. They know that people use the same bad passwords across multiple accounts. Every year, lists come out of bad passwords, taken from all of this information that's been leaked and breached we talked about earlier, and every year you see basically the same 25 passwords at the top of the list. Yes?
Do you recommend that they use the autofill password?
No. Well, sort of. I'll get to that.
Creates it for them?
Yes, but with a password manager. So, what we're going to say here is